Hi, I'm Steve Walker. I'm a tech support engineer with Wheatstone, and today we're going to talk about some of the new features of Navigator 5. Navigator 5 is a paid update. You can get this through your dealer or Wheatstone sales. There's a lot of new stuff in here, so let's start talking about the new features of Navigator 5. I don't think we need this anymore. Let's get rid of that. The first new feature we'll talk about is visible SLIOs. Visible SLIOs make it easy to troubleshoot your logic when you're using soft LIOs. You can already see the blue lights, which we call jellybeans, when working with physical LIOs, but now you can see those same jellybeans when working with soft LIOs. We'll cover this in more detail later. Crosspoint logging is a much requested feature that will help you figure out how and when a crosspoint was made or broken. We get calls that a crosspoint happened all by itself and put something on the air that shouldn't have been, or vice versa. Well, something told that crosspoint change to happen, and this will help you figure out what it was. Custom event logs allow you to trap only certain log event types in a separate tab so you can see them without them scrolling off the Navigator screen when thousands of other informational lines fly by. One of those custom events might be the crosspoint logs we just talked about. Automated backups are another often requested feature. You've always been able to easily make a backup of a blade or the entire system on the Config Manager tab, but now the system can do it for you on a daily basis, because sometimes we forget stuff. Enhanced graphical representations of blade surface pairings. That's a mouthful, but it has to do with the way console blades and their surfaces appear in the system tree. It's easier just to show you, so we'll do that shortly. Crosspoint bookmarks allow you to bookmark one or more crosspoints so that you can break them, go edit the sources or destinations, and easily get those crosspoints back when you're done. A large system may have them scattered across thousands of pixels, and this makes getting back to ground zero easy. We have 3 new diagnostic charts available now, and the first of these is process memory. This helps you see how the memory is doing in each blade and can identify certain issues that could occur, such as memory leaks that might mean a blade needs a reboot. The next diagnostic is blade received traffic. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes and why it's important. Lastly is clock synchronization. Everybody wants a stable clock, and we can monitor that here, so let's get started. One of the great new features of Navigator 5 when paired with the latest blade software is found in the jellybean jar. If you take a look next to each of the LIOs on the screen, you'll see that little round ball, and we call those jellybeans. They light up when an LIO is fired. Watch this. That's pin 7 of the first LIO port, which is actually LIO 6 on this blade. So you already can see that the logic can be a little confusing, but it's really helpful to see those little jellybeans light up when an LIO fires, because that makes you confident that your logic is working. But let's take a look at the SLIOs. Now you can see that they all have little X's next to them. We can tell if they're set as an input or an output, but we won't be able to tell when they fire. The only way we'll be able to tell that is by looking at the LIO log. And here that is. That's the LIO log. And that's, well, it's a little cryptic and kind of hard to understand. The information's in here, but if you take a look at this LIO right here, you can see that, well, we know it's a machine start LIO, but what's this circuit 257? What's all this stuff? It's all there. The information's there, and you can learn how to interpret it. But wouldn't it be great if the SLIOs lit up like the LIOs do? Okay, now I've updated my blade to version 4.3.87 and I'm running Navigator 5. You can clearly see we have the little jellybeans showing for both LIOs and soft LIOs. Let's see if one lights up when we press a button. I've got a little button here that I created just for this purpose. Let's bring the button over. Let's see what happens when I hit the button to fire an SLIO. Looky there. It lit up. Awesome. This is cool. This will make it a lot easier to troubleshoot logic when you're dealing with things that you've never set up before, for example, and you can't figure out why it isn't working. This will make it easy. Now it's possible you may have this feature already if you got in early on a specific Navigator version and Blade version, even though it may not be Navigator 5. If so, lucky you. This is just one of the great new features in Navigator 5. One of the best new features of Navigator 5 is the custom event log feature. That's found under System, and over here under Event Log you can see I've got some special things here. This is not my normal log. There's my normal log. That's that big thing that's always going. Here's the event log. This is only trapping certain things that I want to see, and I want to see them on a separate tab so that they're not scrolling off the screen all the time. What I have here is some cross points, and I mentioned earlier that we now log cross points, so that's another new feature. You can see these cross point connections right here that have been made. You can see a blade reboot, and you can see some lines with LIO in the line. So anything that has LIO that goes into my main log over here is now going to go into my event log. Here's how you set those up. Click on Events and click Add, and look at the different types that are available. You have Startup, which is only things like the blade reboots and the howdy sequences and things like that. You have System, which covers a lot of ground, and Crosspoint. So Crosspoint has its own category, and I have some of all of these set up here. And these are the things that will show up as custom events for me in my log. All these things that I have listed here. Now let's talk a little bit about backups. Everybody sleeps better if they have a good backup of their system, right? Well, this is nothing new. We've been able to do backups with Navigator and the Blade software forever. If I want to back up an individual blade, click on the blade, go to Config Manager, and hit Backup. Are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. Okay, it did it. That backup will show up down here now, and there it is. That's it right there. Blade 3 backed up. I can restore that by clicking on it and hitting Restore. What if I want to back up my whole system? Well, click on System and go to that Config Manager tab. And here's the All Blade Backup button. Yes, there, I just did that. It's pretty quick. Doesn't take long to do. If I don't want to restore, I can restore just one blade, or I can restore all of the system settings and all blades. Notice here I've got salvos only checked, so I can actually restore just the salvos. If I messed up a salvo and don't remember what it was, I can just restore salvos. Or I can restore all of the settings, and I can do this for one blade or for all of them from this screen. There's also a current crosspoint button. If I hit save, it will save the current state of all my cross points. And if I want to restore that, I just select that file and restore it. Boom. Looks like I had 199 cross points, but none of them changed, so it says no signals are affected. Nothing changed when I did the restore because I didn't change anything. I just did a backup and then an immediate restore. Let's say though I'm not real good about making backups, and maybe I haven't made one in 2 years. Well, I can ensure that backups happen by using the new feature in Navigator 5 and the new Blade software called Auto Blade Backup. If we click on System and Preferences, you can see the Auto Blade Backup pane right here. And there are several settings here to make this work. First, you want to enable the blade backups and select a folder where they're going to go. Just pick a folder somewhere. That's where it'll store them. I recommend enabling the Crosspoint export. Even though it changes, it doesn't age well. If you restore a Crosspoint backup that you made a month ago, it may not give you what you're wanting today, but it's a starting point. Tell it how many days you want to store and what time you want to do them each day. Mine is set for 10/26. I don't know why it's set for that. It had to set it for some time. So once all those are set, hit the set button and it will enable the blade backups. Notice export's only performed if Navigator is running at the time of backup. So the signal info export and the Crosspoint export won't run if you're not running Navigator. But the blade backups themselves will, because they're run by the service that's installed by the system. So as long as the computer is running, the blade backups will happen, but not if the PC goes to sleep. PC is in sleep mode, no blade backups, because that service will go to sleep. Another new feature you heard me talk about is a better representation using little graphic elements of the pairings between surfaces and blades. I'll show you an example. Blade 2 right here is an LXE engine blade. It's paired to this LXE. You can see the IP address of the surface host. You see the little green connecting line between the blade and its surface. That means everybody's happy because it's green. But if we go down here to this one, blade 9, this is supposed to be paired with a Tecton surface, and they're not talking to each other right now. Something's wrong with that, and I need to go look at that, but it doesn't know the IP address of the surface. And so it's saying, look, I don't know who my surface is or where it is, so that's what that red line is for. I have another LXE down here, and it's blade 12 is the engine blade, and this is the surface. This is my glass LXE, so there's really no surface, but the IP address is the surface host, and it thinks there's a surface there, and it's all happy. So there's a little green line, everybody's happy. Now, we also have, with some of our surfaces, the ability to have primary and secondary mix engines. And so let's see what that looks like. Now, I don't have that. I don't have any primary and secondary mix engines here, but I have a little graphic that shows you what that would look like. And if I turn that on, you can see, this is from our lab system in New Bern, that blade 238 and blade 238 primary, 238 primary and 238 secondary, because in this case they use the same blade ID, but only one's active at a time. Both of those serve this surface on 192.168.86.30, and the secondary is in charge right now. That's why it's on top. But the green lines show you that both of them are connected and both are happy. So if there was a failover situation, the primary would come back online and the secondary would go down here. And it might, if there's a failover, it might be that the secondary went bad for some reason. Maybe someone pulled the cable or whatever. But that's what we're seeing right here. Have you ever had to disconnect an audio source from a destination because you needed to make changes either to the source or the destination? We all know you can't make changes to a source or destination while it's connected. So let's look at these four right here that I've set up. Let's say we need to disconnect those so that we can make some changes to their sources or destinations. And then we want to easily remember how to put those back. We can do that by using these bookmarks. If I right click and add a bookmark to each of these cross points, you'll see the little white squares that go around them. That's going to make it really easy. I can even go here and just view only bookmarks, and I can see just those four cross points. Now I can disconnect those, make my changes, and come back and reconnect them very easily. Then I can remove the bookmarks. I think the coolest new features of the Navigator 5 software when paired with the new Blade software is the diagnostics. This is the first diagnostic screen. It's called Process Memory. And like all of the diagnostics, it gives you a 6-hour window into that parameter. So you can see, I think I restarted my Navigator right about here. I don't think I restarted the blade. I think it was the Navigator. I did restart this blade, so it could be either. But anyway, this was at about 2:24 this afternoon. I either restarted Navigator or this blade. And it's showing me the amount of memory that the main process in the blade is using. I can get that information from the System View menu by clicking on Blade Status and looking at Blade 3. It shows 7% right here. And that's what we see right here, 7%. This is important, and this is not a very interesting screen normally, but the reason this is important is that there have been software releases where a small memory leak might have been discovered that could eventually cause a problem. We want to make sure that that you can catch that. If there is a memory leak in a version of Blade software that you're running, you'll see this number start to creep up over time. Once it starts creeping up, maybe 60% or so, if it gets above that number, I think it's time to reboot that blade. And then let us know that you think you have a memory leak in whatever version of software you're running, and we'll get you a version that doesn't have that issue. Just keep an eye on your blades. Let's look at my blade 4. It looks like it's sitting here at 1.4%. Blade 2 is 6.7. Blade 1 is 6.6, so most of them are around that range. Looks like the Blade 4, the newer blades, the Blade 4 models are using less, but it's probably because they have more memory to spare. Let's see about this one. Yeah, this is 1.1%. 0%, but that's a software blade, so it's not going to report that number. These software blades, Blade 99 is my Linux driver, and it's not going to report anything for that. Blade 11 is my Layers stream, which is also on a Linux machine, and it's a software driver, so it's not going to report anything. But the hardware blades will. So those are the ones you want to keep an eye on. The next diagnostic that I wanted to talk about is the receive traffic diagnostic. This shows you how much traffic the blade that you're clicked on is receiving in thousands of packets per second. This is an important thing to know because if your IGMP traffic snooping querier isn't working properly, you could see a lot more traffic going to each blade than is supposed to be there. In fact, you could see all of the traffic in your entire system going to every port on your switch, and we don't want that. We could overwhelm, or we would in fact overwhelm the gigabit ports in the blades, possibly, but certainly the 10100 ports in the surfaces, talent stations, and some of the other peripheral devices. So we want to control that, and we want to make sure that only the traffic that those blades and surfaces are calling for is sent to those ports. And that's what the purpose of IGMP is, and that's what the snooping querier does. So you can look at this graph, and what you're seeing here is simply me routing and unrouting various things just to give us a more interesting graph to look at. Right now you can see that we have about 11,000 packets per second coming into this blade. Now a stereo audio signal, a quarter millisecond audio signal, which is our standard for WheatNet IP, is 4,000 packets per second. So this is approximately 3 signals. There may be some other factors involved, so this number may not be an exact multiplication of the number of streams that you have. But let's go look at the streams that I do have. Let's see, let's look at only connections. Okay, so there's only 3 things here listed, 3 destinations for my Blade 3 that I'm looking at that have a signal connected to them. One of them is a DMX program 1, one's a DMX program 2, and the third one here is an LXE program. Those are all quarter millisecond streams, so that should be about 12K. Our indication is 11K. I'm good with that. If this looked like something like 70 or 80K or an even higher number, I'd be worried about it. But it looks good. And if we go back over to diagnostics, we can see that over the time period since I restarted Navigator at about 2:24 p.m. this afternoon, I've changed these quite a bit. I've routed and unrouted things, as I mentioned, but the traffic hasn't gone above about 11K. And so that matches what I'm feeding the blade, so I think I'm in good shape. The final diagnostic and the last thing we'll talk about in this video is the clock synchronization screen. Right now I'm looking at my Clockmaster blade, which is evident by the square wave in the icon. That happens to be the one that is set as my clock master. This line, the numbers, the values are very, very stable. They barely move. It's a straight line until we get over here, and clearly something happened at that point, which was, I don't know, maybe an hour ago, half an hour ago. And what happened there was that I pulled the plug on the Clockmaster blade, the network cable. I pulled it out 2 or 3 times and plugged it back in just to give us something to talk about. Otherwise, we'd be looking at a screen with just a straight line on it, which is what you normally want to see. If your clock is stable, that's what you'll normally see. If you're seeing these kinds of dips or any kind of peaks or anything like that, you've got a problem with your clock. And it could be that the blade, if the blade is providing clock for the system, it could be that that blade needs a reboot. If it's an external clock like a PTP clock, or you're clocking off of a different source plugged into a blade, then you need to look at that source to see if it's having a clock issue. Normally a straight line is what you're wanting to see. If I look at a different blade, I can see that the line isn't quite perfectly straight. It's a little bit jaggedy there, but basically these numbers are still fine. They're barely moving, and everything is good until we get here. So look at this screen and watch for problems in your clock. That can help you troubleshoot little pops and clicks if you have those in your audio. Well, this has just been an introduction to the new features of Navigator 5. I really hope you got something out of it. Let us know. Email us and give us your thoughts. And if you have any questions, email those to techsupport@wheatstone.com. Hope you've enjoyed this.